Hey everybody, welcome. Welcome to the May 2021 LAPPG meeting. And we are going to be hosting a panel on the Unholy, from shutdown to silver screen. And a big thank you to Zeiss and to Temprimental VFX and to Sony for helping make this happen. I'm really looking forward to this panel about the Unholy, which started shooting early in 2020 and then was shut down due to the pandemic. We're going to learn all about that, but it really left sort of a giant puzzle for the post-production and the VFX world there to try to put it together. And so we're going to have a chance to learn how the movie was shot and then how it was saved. Why don't we watch the trailer? And a thank you to Sony for giving us permission to show the trailer. And then I'll introduce you to our panelists.
There are people out there that don't believe in your miracles. How would you respond to those folks?
Seeing is believing.
And why do you think Mary chose you?
I opened myself up and welcomed her in.
I have read several libraries worth on the supernatural. Investigated half a dozen miracles. Prove them all false.
Don't doubt her. Doubt weakens faith.
This is not the work of the Virgin Mary. It's the work of the unholy. Holy Mary, Mother of God, the Lord is with you.
Okay, I don't know about you guys, but that got my heart pumping. And I'm very excited that we're going to talk about this. I have to give full disclosure. I did see the movie in the daytime with all the lights on under the covers, and it still super scared me. So it did its thing. And so a big congratulations. It's hard to finish a film during a pandemic. It's just almost next to impossible. So congratulations to our panelists today. I felt right from the get-go, there was just that scary mood. I mean, the mood was set at the beginning, it lasted through the whole thing. I'd love to sort of get a sense from you, Craig. What were some of the shooting techniques and some of the moves that you used to bring that, that mood to the project?
Well, I'm happy to hear you say that you felt throughout, because that's one of the things that Evan, the director, and I talked about, was that it had to have an unsettling feel. It had to feel like there was an undercurrent underneath the entire film, that something wasn't quite right in this town. And, you know, we didn't want to tip our hand too early or too strong, but we wanted it to be there all the time. So a lot of it was just, you know, simple kind of old school filmmaking storytelling techniques of just very simple camera movement and preserving camera movement for specific moments when you knew it could sync up with music and sound design to just kind of add that other layer of creep. You know, we played it pretty straight until we didn't. You know, that was kind of the MO, was like, you know, there's always a risk in horror movies where you tip your hand too often and too early, and then the rest of it doesn't have the impact you'd want. So it was a question of always finding that fine balance between just, sometimes a little 6-inch camera move can make a world of difference in terms of the mood and tone of a scene. So that it was just those kind of things. And then obviously when things got really crazy, then we could really let loose and to kind of go to town on things. But we had to kind of keep our powder dry until we wanted to fire the cannon, so to speak.
Evan and Craig really worked closely together. So we got a lot of really good information. Sometimes you're just fishing in the dark. Evan was decisive, and he really clearly would say, like, if you give him 3 options, he'd say, I like option B. And it became really simple. Rather than having to do a lot of build option 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I will pick, which is a very expensive and difficult way to go. And we've had to do that. We didn't have the time or the money. And because we were all working remotely, it was really harder to describe things. A lot of times when you're in a room with people, you're kind of using your hands and you're showing drawings and you get a visceral feel, like you're watching their eyebrow, you know, like, but in this case, anyway, we all got together, and I think Craig and Evan had done a lot of work to figure out what the visual on the movie was going to be.
tell us a little bit about how Temprimental set up. It's a little bit different from some other VFX houses. So can you tell us like how that benefited with what you had to do?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, Temprimental was set up 6 years ago as a remote-based visual effects company, with teams in California and London. And over the years, we've sort of built up lots of relationships and partnerships across the globe. And that's really been sort of the forte of what the company is about. We never wanted to be a brick and mortar visual effects company, and it took some time to get momentum, because it was a very new thing. Even though the VFX remote workflow is actually quite common, but just sort of it was just something that the studios it took some time to sort of explain to them how that all worked. And I think as I said, the pandemic was atrocious for everybody, but it really thrust us into the forefront of what the DNA of the company was about, and how we can maneuver and achieve what we achieved with this shutdown. And as Craig mentioned, and as Robert will also attest, is that this is the first time I've ever been on a film where we got told we were shut down. But Sony's commitment was that we are going to finish this film. How do we finish it? And I think the relationship that Robert had with Craig and Evan, and just in terms of us being able to really do our homework and just sort of strategize in how to complete certain scenes. And then utilizing all of the resources that we had across the globe. I mean, that was really it. I mean, a lot of people were trying to figure out how to become remote, because the artists couldn't go to their offices anymore. And everyone was building workstations at home and trying to kind of get robust internet lines so they could suddenly start working on shots. And we'd already tried and tested that pipeline, over the course of 6 years. So, luckily we tapped into our resources, although we got thrown endless challenges. And it's interesting doing these talks, actually, because it just makes you think back to the day that it all happened and how we reacted. And I'm still trying to digest a lot of things even today, in terms of, every time we turned a corner, we were either shut down again, or there was no actor availability, or we suddenly got told, guess what, we're releasing the movie in a month, and now you have to finish 300 plus visual effects shots. How are we going to do that?
Can you tell us, Craig, a little bit about the cameras and the lenses that you used, why you chose them, and what benefits that they had for helping you get the shots that you wanted to get?
Sure. We shot with the Sony Venice, which I hadn't worked with, but I'd always wanted to, and this was a Sony film. So Sony kind of said, you'll be working with the Venice, but I was happy to hear that, because I've always wanted to shoot with it, and I'd been looking to test it on some things, but I hadn't actually spent much time with it. So we did extensive testing and prep, and I really got to know the camera. And then we also tested a number of different lenses, lens and filter combinations. I spent a day in LA basically doing tests, and we found that the combination of the Zeiss Supreme Primes and the Venice gave us a combination of not only the look we wanted, but a compact form factor and all of the other elements that enabled us to have flexibility in terms of how we could use the camera and also move quickly. We also knew we had it all out of night exteriors, so the 2500 ISO setting on the Venice was incredibly valuable, because we tested that extensively, and that increased light sensitivity, especially when we got into the forests, really enabled us to do amazing things that we would have had a hard time doing otherwise. And that, combined with the really fast Zeiss Supreme Primes, we could work at very low light levels and get the light to penetrate those thick Massachusetts forests, which is not easy to do.
You may have did a little bit with the XD technology on the Zeiss Supreme Primes in the process with getting that to the VFX.
Yeah, the ability for the lenses to send the metadata information about the lens positions and settings basically was invaluable, especially when we came back from shutdown and we had to do some really incredibly specific VFX work. Those tools were invaluable. We always have the kind of physical human aspect of everybody taking notes, and we had the Zoe log system going to kind of transfer those notes between units and things, but having that lens data be able to be submitted electronically just gave us that kind of fallback, and it was incredibly valuable.
We used it extensively it's a great check. The assistants are always writing stuff down, but that's keeping it over time as well. So that's very different. Like you can get the start of a shot and the end of a shot. Um, to have all that information in the metadata in post, we use it to double check, and we also use it as the absolute source of our information. So we love it.
Nice. And let's talk about the actual shutdown for a moment. Craig, what was the, you were on set, how did it all go down? And what were you told, like when you guys got shut down?
Yeah, the last week of shooting before we got shut down was extremely bizarre. I mean, as it was for the whole world, where you're sort of getting this information trickling in of you know, things getting canceled, and you know, and we're working, so we're obviously very focused on what we're doing, but you're sort of getting these little, you know, missives from the outside world about what's going on. We hear like, oh, the NBA just canceled its season. Well, that's not good, you know. And it accumulated really quickly, and we had a number of lunch meetings with people from Sony and Screen Gems to talk about, you know, what was going on and what their take was on it, and those were really useful. And when it came to the Friday, which I think was Friday the 13th, ironically, we basically shot the day, and then they sent out call sheets for Monday. And, you know, I had a meeting with the camera crew at WRAP, and they said, we're going to continue. And I said, well, as we know now, that's what the plan is, you know. And I said, but just don't turn your phones off, because everything's changing by the minute. And, you know, sure enough, we got up Saturday morning and they said, let's have a meeting. And we got together and they said, now we have to shut down. It's just not realistic to continue. And I think, you know, it was obviously the right thing to do, but nobody wants to shut a show down.
It was a really amazingly fantastic creative effort, because we all got involved in the storyboards. They'd be passed around, and, you know, Craig would line it, you know, like design a shot, and then I'd say, these are the visual effects, this is what we have to do fake, this is real, green screen, not green screen, etc. Okay. So we're shooting that movie. That was a tough movie. Then the pandemic hits, and of course we all come back, and then we start getting the calls from Sony, and they're like, what do we do? Like, literally, what do we do? Like, can we save this movie? And the sad thing was that when we got shut down, we had pushed a lot of all the heavy visual effects green screen shooting to the end of the schedule, because we were going to go on to stage at the end. So we never shot that stuff. And then there was a few other scenes that we really wished we'd have shot, like the couple of the crowd scenes in the church. Like, we were like, oh my God, why didn't we shoot that? So we come back, same process starts again. We're all on the phone, we're all talking, we're all trading storyboards. I personally got very involved in the storyboard design. Craig was very involved in the shot designs, and these shots would go back and forth. And like, I would say, if you put this character in the foreground and this character there, we can do that shot. But if you put them together, we can't do that shot, you know, that kind of thing. So then they do a new storyboard that was doable visual effects wise. So what we did to come back was we pre-planned the whole shoot, all of us together, and we came up with a set of storyboards that visual effects believed we could achieve. And then we started to get thrown the curveballs that, Raoul, like, I remember joking with Craig about this. Like, Craig, what if they came to you and said, we're going to do a movie and your main actors can't all be there, and your crowd is not allowed to sit anywhere near each other, and your crowd scenes, you can't have them with your main actor, and some of your main actors can't work with other main actors because they have health challenges, and a lot of your actors are going to be in other countries, and you can't get in your locations with a second unit because the first unit, second unit can't ever even physically occupy the same space. So when they shoot, you can't go visit and tell them what to do. I mean, the challenges were so enormous that it's hard to believe that we did it, but we just kept plugging away, like boom, boom, boom. Okay, we will do, instead of the church, which had 100 people, and divided into 3 passes of 30 people, we did like 30 passes of 2 people. There's one plate. So you got 2 people that are socially distant on the left and 2 on the right. Now we had to fill that thing. There we go. We but these are the comps that are coming in. This isn't how it was shot. So every one of these was a socially distant plate with all the occlusions that you have to deal with, and a green screen had to be behind every person. And this gave really difficult challenges to Craig to light. I mean, you don't want green screens all over your room. And then the actor in the foreground wasn't there. He was in Portugal.
That's right.
So every single shot that he was in the entire movie had to be pre-planned. Then all his shots had to be done in Portugal, matching, comping him in. Craig can talk to the lighting part of that. The visual effects side is so dependent on the lighting that if Craig didn't succeed in communicating how to light it, we wouldn't have ever comped these shots. And they're really amazing.
Yeah, we couldn't rely on natural light because then they would come in and the lighting would be completely different for all these layers of the plates, not just between our work, but even within their tiling. The lighting would change over the course of the hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it took to tile. So what we had to do, which caused our producer to almost have a heart attack, was we had to tent the whole church in. We had to basically build a big tent around all the windows of the church so we could control all the lighting coming in for day, sunny day, cloudy day, night work. We had, I think, 5 or 6 very specific looks for different scenes. And all of that had to be recreated by the second unit team. So when we lit the scene, we had to do very specific notes about light placements, light readings, even the heights of lamps, the angle, like everything. It was all so incredibly specifically documented so that the second team could come in and replicate the exact lighting we had for main unit. And Tom Fitzgerald, our second unit DP, was incredible. He was a local guy from Boston, is incredibly talented, and he just nailed this stuff. Like, it's so hard to do. And, you can see from these images that's being shared that it is seamless. Like, it's when it all put together, you'd never guess. And, it feels like natural light and it feels like a complete thing, which is what we wanted it to be. So, all of the work inside the church had to be done that way. We couldn't shoot any of the church scenes with natural light. We had to recreate all of our own light because almost every scene had some element of VFX in it. So, that was a new thing for me. We'd never kind of tackled anything like this before. And when I had to go to Andre, our line producer, and say, like, so we need to build a tent around the entire church and have it up for a week while we shoot. And then the second unit has to come in and use all the same stuff. Like, she was just like, what? But there was no other solution. That was the only way to do it.
We went massively over budget on our visual effects. Well, mostly Robert's expenses, if I can be honest with you. But again, they supported it, and we were able to reach out to some pretty heavy-hitting companies. I mean, I have to mention UPP and Victor and his team over there in Prague, because they did an incredible job with our CG, with our fire. And they weren't cheap, but that's what we needed in order to make these visual effects shots good and believable, and the studio supported that, and proof's in the pudding on screen. So yeah,
I'm a believer in real, and so UPP is too. So they went and built a tree full size and set it on fire to comp it in. So a lot of our fire, and they just use digital fire to blend the seams. So everybody out there, real fire works a lot better than digital fire. Always shoot real elements.
Yeah, Robert showed me a video of a parking lot with a tree on fire in the middle of it, and I thought, I love these guys. Like, somebody built a tree, set it on fire, shot it.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
The interactive lighting is what sells it. If you don't do that, you're in trouble. This is a complete mishmash of digital and real, but the thing that really sells it is that it's practical fire, really shaped like that tree. But of course, the fire on her as she jumps down, that's digital fire attached to her, and she's got a lot of cloth simulation, et cetera, et cetera. So
that was one of the questions that came in. Will you elaborate on what interactive lighting is and how it was used in the film? Could you talk a little bit more about what it is?
The interactive lighting is basically when you have a VFX element that is interacting with the environment, but there's obviously, because it's a VFX element, there's no physical interaction of the light. And that's something that can be recreated, but it's never quite the same because you miss the kind of organic random elements that happen with light interacting with objects. So we always try to put interactive light in to support what Robert's doing. And in this case, a lot of the time we had essentially lighting right in front of the tree that was, basically blasting right into the lens that would then get painted out to be covered with their practical fire. But because it was basically in line with the tree, it makes sense that that's where it's coming from. Because if you put it off screen and it's not quite coming from the right direction, it doesn't really work. So a lot of the times we just had the lights basically right in the shot, staring right at the lens, flaring the lens and doing all those great things. And then also interacting with the environment in a way that feels real, so that when the fire goes in, it all kind of comes together and you don't feel like there's a bunch of lights off screen that are not quite the right angle, not quite the right intensity, and also, the effect, the flicker effects are so critical too, because if we overdo the flicker effects or undersell the flicker effects, again, it doesn't gel with what Robert's doing. So it was always about Robert and I discussing the intensity of what the vis effect was going to be so we could match it.
We talked about the church interior with the pandemic work and the fire in the tent, etc. But you can imagine we had many scenes. We're just using those as examples. That weren't the only thing we did. So this went on throughout multiple scenes, other exteriors, other crowd shots, etc.
There was one scene, I won't say which one because I don't want to, tip our hand, but there's one scene which was shot with 3 different actors by 3 different DPs in 3 different countries. Like that's a new one on me, and it works beautifully. And the DPs in the other countries were incredible, and it was the fact that it was all done virtually, and we were just over Zoom, like sharing images and the lighting plans and talking about things, and the fact that it all came together the way it did is really. I mean, I must admit I was skeptical. I'm like, I don't know. It seems like a big ask. Yeah. It's one thing to do, to comp actors in action scenes, but to be sitting in a dialogue scene with actors that aren't there and have them interacting in a natural way with each other, that's the hardest thing to do. And I think we pulled it off.
Now I'm going to have to watch it again. So I'm going to try to figure out what that scene was.
Yeah, and that was my first time really supervising visual effects remotely. So we had a satellite link up with the stage, and I really had a very good image. And I would literally say, I think you need to add, more light to that blue screen on the right. And I worked the whole day with the director, and we were adjusting shots as we went. And we had a supervisor there, and there was a DP there. And that was also an amazing experience to actually supervise visual effects remote. And I think that's another step that we're going to do for, short little shoots. I think I've proved to myself that it can be done.
It's my understanding that you used the Sony Ci platform.
When everything went remote, Sony jumped up, and they had their Ci platform already, but it wasn't really set up to deliver media to the artists and then do a home run back to the edit house, to conform, et cetera, et cetera. So they put their team together, and within a couple of months, they built this platform add-on that allowed our visual effects producers everyone fed off the cloud, basically. So instead of having to take a shuttle drive, across town to someone that's now working in their living room, we were able to or do an unbelievably unwieldy Aspera package that's going to be, 600 gigs and just absolutely choke the entire apartment building someone lives in. So that cloud came in, and they put it together before we needed it, and it was running in the background, and I didn't even realize how much it was running in the background till we had a meeting the other day when they informed me more about how much it had been used. And I was kind of shocked that they had just silently put this into place so that all the trafficking of the post materials was seamlessly done through the cloud to the artist and then back where it belongs to get into the finished film.
Some of these things we've been talking about, you wouldn't even think about. It would be like, this wouldn't even come into the conversation because if you brought it up in a meeting, people look at you like you're insane. But we had to do it because of our surroundings. So I think we all have tools now that we can use. Maybe we don't want to if we don't have to, but we can if we need to. And, it was surprising how well everything worked. And it was surprising how well the collaborations worked virtually and remotely. And, just having that, and communication, I learned a lot about communication in terms of how to be incredibly specific and still creative, where it wasn't just execution. We weren't like choking the life out of it to make it fit into this box we need to fit into. We're actually still making the movie and doing it in a way that was creative and collaborative, but doing it in a way that was also incredibly specific and detailed. So I think it was great skills. And, the other thing I will say is I'm happy to hear that crew health is finally starting to come into the conversation for shoot days. It's never been a conversation about the health of the crew, not in this way. I mean, obviously nobody wants anybody to get sick, but the fact that we're now talking about like, maybe the days are too long for the crew. Maybe we should do shorter days. Maybe we should, think about that in terms of, not just from a human standpoint, but from a creative standpoint. You get better work without a crew that's exhausted. So, those sort of conversations I hope continue.
Do you think that your model here, Raoul, is going to be sort of what post houses and VFX houses are going to be going toward in the future? Or
I think so. Talking to a lot of friends of mine that are at have facilities and whatever else, and look, everyone's gearing up for this remote workflow. So I think it's more accepted today that artists will work from home and remote into to workstations within brick and mortar buildings, and and a lot of artists will still want to come into the office. I mean, it's an interesting change, because especially with the junior artists that come in, interns and whatever else, that learn off those more senior, compositors or CG artists, we're sort of talking about, well, how do you keep training the next generation of artists, when they're not physically in the office working with those supervisors and everything. But, we'll find a way. Everybody always does. But I think this way it's definitely enabling houses to crew up a lot quicker and not necessarily have to have so much real estate that drains the cost, because visual effects is a very, very tough medium in a sense that it's not that well funded at times, and houses struggle, and lots of houses open and close very, very quickly. So this might be a way of just sort of creating a little bit of sustainability within the industry as well.
We will look for that. And I just want to thank you each, Craig and Raoul and Robert. And I want to thank Sony and Zeiss and Temprimental VFX for letting us bring everybody together today. I want to thank our partners. Of course, they make this happen for all of us. At our gold level, we have Adobe, Blackmagic Design, OWC, and Sony. And at our silver level, we have AJA, Isotope, SGO, and Zeiss. So a big thank you to all of them. And we have lots of other companies that are supporting companies, media companies, and community companies that help us get the word out about our meetings. So huge thank you to all of these companies as well. And I think that's about it, guys. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Greg, appreciate it, Raoul.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Good to see everyone again.
Yeah.
Stay safe and be well. Take care.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.